could you suggest a better one, or could anybody suggest a better one?
I think, well, when we were looking at it last week, I think we just changed it to basically what is the building fabric.
Okay, could you?
Because it is obviously a huge difference between dealing with plasterboard or concrete or glass, etc. And the way we're looking at the various different columns, the majority of them are self-explanatory, but at the end, the commissioner, obviously, when you're dealing with dampers, somebody comes out and actually commissions the system, and there isn't anything like that for passive fire. So we were just using that as a sort of sign-off, clerk of work, generic column, but everything else was pretty much self-explanatory.
Okay.
In some of our buildings that we do, we have independent passive fire protection inspectors come out. Suppose that could fall under the commission as well, like Sharon's saying with the clerk of work type role. Yeah,
but the problem is that that's a voluntary scheme. We're a third party certified installer of products, and we're part of a scheme whereby an independent inspector comes out, but they only are actually required to come out to 4 projects a year. There's people who are part of the third party scheme who, if they don't declare a project on the portal, basically we register all our jobs on a website and the inspectors pick from one of those and attend site. If you don't put the job on the portal in the first place, they don't know about it, so they can't independently inspect it. And then you've got other, obviously non-certified contractors carrying out the works. So again, it depends whether or not the main contractor engages on an independent inspector to sign that off. So that's why we're thinking it's not a catch-all. So maybe if the commissioner in this instance was just a sort of generic term for whoever signs that off.
Yes, I think that probably is. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll try and catch that up from the transcript. Does that make a difference in terms of who we're getting the information from then, Sharon?
Not when we were going through the list, but in changing it or understanding that column, the rest of it was fairly explanatory or self-explanatory. Hilti had actually produced the original ticks in white boxes.
Yes.
And the group last week, any changes that we made, we added or deleted the tick. Oh, sorry, I think I've lost my signal. Sorry, I've just lost my signal there. Any changes that we made, we highlighted with the red box so that they could differentiate between the Hilti standalone submission and then the group discussion last week.
So in terms of on row 3, where we say what is the base material, what should we change that question to read, and just can type it in?
I think we were looking at it as if you're going to start talking about service maintenance, if you were talking about like the base material would be the building fabric. So the way we looked at it was the client and developer would design it or would want it for the cosmetic, aesthetic, whether it would be a cladding panel, whether it's a concrete wall, brick wall, block wall, rendered, etc. The designer would then select the product that would give them the cosmetic look of the building, take into wind load, etc., etc. The main contractor would then build that. So we've marked it down as those 3, or the first 3 items, first 3 columns, or the first 3 parties would be involved in the selection, design, and then installation of that building fabric.
Okay, but can I just can you change what is the base material, just to put in brackets after it, maybe the building fabric? That's what we're saying, isn't it?
I think so, because if you pick up what is the base material, and someone turns out and says, well, it's a brick wall, what is the type, you know, and then that becomes, it changes it from a generic to a specific. That's how we've read it. So the client might want, or the developer might want a scheme across a building park or a business park. Then the designer would select materials that would give them that look, but would take into cognizance the building regulations, and then the main contractor may still get involved in changing some of those selections, but still trying to provide the same cosmetic finishes.
Sure.
So that's how we've read that.
Does anybody else have a view on that? That's really weird, isn't it? That's not allowed to edit it.
I think that's the lookup. I think you have to go to the lookup table and alter it. That must be applied to every different template.
All right. Okay. Yep. Okay, let's not worry about that for the minute.
Unless you just highlight that a different colour and use the column after commissioner to, you know, just to, so we can keep that record of changes made. Just revert it back to put building fabric in the.
Yeah, I think
I'm on the phone here. JI3, you know, just change the whatever text in there, and then change B3 to yellow so that we, or A3 to yellow so that we know that we're looking to make a change again.
Good point.
And then again, going down, like, what is the type? Obviously, the designer, main contractor. What is the movement of the structure? Again, we're saying that each of those elements would come from the designer based on the client developer scheme. Environmental exposure, again, the client developer, if they're picking something that's, you know, a pier or in the middle of you know, some sort of tidal zone and a high classification. If it's a C5 environment, for example, it's a lot harsher on certain products, including intumescent coating. So again, we just went through it as a sentence and said, like, basically who's involved within it. And as I say, the changes really started around number 15. We sort of were in agreement with Hilti for the first 14 rows. And the changes on 15 were what supports are needed for continuous support during the fire. We added in the designer.
Yeah.
At that point.
Sorry, Kelly, you've got a hand up.
Hi, yeah, I'm struggling to understand how this would help us within the operational phase, because if we're going through replacement programs, is it expected that this level of information would need to be gathered again, and then we would have to define who would provide that information? Because it's a lot easier to get that information at the building design stage, granted, and then you can, you know, you can find that requirement of information. We've got to remember, one, this has got to go into our systems somewhere, which I'm sure we'll all agree none of us hold systems at this moment in time to hold that level of information, and that's what we've got to look at. And two, operationally, how if we've got to collate this level of information operationally on an ongoing basis, how people would see that happening.
Yeah, Kelly, that is the purpose of this. I appreciate what you're saying. The likelihood is that you would, as the operations team, as the asset management team, perhaps, you might only want maybe 5% of this information, right? But for the digital record, for the contractor, for the main contractor, for the individual trade contractors, then this level of detail, they say, is needed for them. Yeah. So from this operations group perspective, principally what I would like is for you to make sure that the information that you feel you need going forward, either for a new build, so when you get information at handover, or on, as you say, refurbishment work, is going to be, so penetration seals, for example, in many cases, you get very poor quality information about where the penetration seals are and what the materials are, etc. Am I right?
Yeah, we wouldn't have yet this level of information currently on our buildings, no.
Well, yeah, I think generally, are you satisfied that you get high quality information about where the penetration seals are on new buildings?
No, of course we don't get anywhere near the level of information, not just on that, on lots of different things.
Yeah, so looking at this from the penetration seal perspective, and also how that goes to make up a fire compartment, for example. So it's not just about the penetration seal, it's about the wall and the other elements, as you understand. What this is designed to do is to ensure that, certainly on a new build, because this is a new design and build scenario, that we're collecting the information here that the experts have said that is important for them to be confident that they've satisfied what's needed, if that makes sense. Now, in terms of your existing applications, your existing software applications, as you say, they probably only need, maybe 5% of this, in which case that's fine. This information is being collected during the design and construction process, and then you would then consume it for your purposes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the overload of information that we would receive that would be useful moving forward.
Yeah, the good news is that the way technology works now, you can hold a substantial amount of machine readable information, but if it's machine readable, you only need to see the information that you actually need for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
George, no, sorry, George. The only thing I was going to add was, at the moment, as a passive fire installer, I'm aware of the information that we give to main contractors that hasn't been passed to end clients. So someone like Kelly may need the information that I can provide, but the O&M manuals that are being provided just now are like woefully inadequate. And I think we can't continue to provide information or not provide information or continue to operate as we're doing just now. So there might be a period where we're going from nothing to everything, and then it'll settle down in between. But maybe somebody like Kelly, I don't understand what they receive, but I'm aware that I can give a whole host of information, but it doesn't necessarily go to the right person that needs it for the building management. So yeah, it probably does feel overload just now, but I think it's got to go from where we are just now, possibly too far in the opposite direction, and then settle back down. But it certainly needs to change from where it is just now. So I don't know if that's looking at it from my side of the fence, if you like.
Yeah, I do get what you're saying, but I think we've got a risk here of, I'm not saying this information's not needed, but there's a risk here of having, I know you can pick and choose with technology and information, I've got no issue with that, but that information being provided to a housing provider, this level of information, the building manager, whoever that may be, is not going to be using this information. What they need to understand is the people who need to do the maintenance work, the inspection works, the replacement works, the right level of information is being given. So I don't necessarily think, I just find that it would be really uncomfortable for me to be able to say this is what we would need, when actually we're in effect the conduit of ensuring the information is in the right place and accessible to the right people. What we need to ensure is that the right people who need that information are getting the right bits.
But then would you not be the source of that information, Kelly? Like if we're going to a property, we are often been told that, well, I don't have any information on the building at all, or I've got something, but it's insufficient for our needs.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Just
Yeah.
yes.
So I think we're giving you the Yale, Yale.com, and you only need the plumber department, but I need something else from that. So I think, as I say, I think that my worry is just now that we go to properties, existing properties, as well as new builds. The information has been there, but wasn't captured and now lost, or has never been provided to the end user. So if, we don't know what we need until it's too late. And I think this captures the information. And as I say, maybe over time, some of it falls away, but I think we've got to just make it all singing, all dancing, and then trim off the fat, thereafter.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's just my opinion.
Okay.
I think the other consideration, Kelly, is that nobody really knows yet what will be needed in 2 or 3 years' time or 5 years' time when something happens. And nobody knows what the regulator is going to be looking for, because essentially we're moving from an industry that is contractually led to one that's regulated. And that's a huge change in terms of, if you look at the way oil and gas works, the level of evidence that you need is much greater than in a non-regulated industry. And essentially that's where we're moving to. Well, we have moved. That's what the Building Safety Act has put in place. So I'm definitely against having more information or giving people more information that they need to do the job. But it's also the case that we need to make sure that when the building is delivered, the information that you might need in the future has actually been provided. Because if it's not there, then it's going to cost you a lot of money to go and find it afterwards. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that, George. I think the fact that the Defective Premises Act now allows these claims to be retrospectively applied for 30 years, we want to capture as much information as possible and justify the use of a product that in future years might be deemed inappropriate. But we haven't got a crystal ball and we don't know that. So we need as much information as possible to be able to say this was the thought process and this justification for using it to fight off any potential claims in the future.
Sure. Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes left. My suggestion is we crack through this. I think the point is, Kelly, that the fact that we're putting this into a data schema doesn't mean that you will have to collect it all. I mean, what we're trying to do is go through this exercise of basically saying who might be the best person to get the information from. Later, when you're putting together your asset information requirements, you can pick from this in a structured way to decide what you want, either for a new build or for a later stage. But you can't do it unless we've got it defined as machine readable data. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Good. Has anybody else got any observations? Isan, you're from a housing association, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. I think there is a lot of information, but I think you're right, George. It's better that we have as much as we can in anticipation of what is going to be required. And we're also mindful of bloating up the information that we get. But at this stage, we're trying to ascertain as much as we can in terms of this kind of data.
Yeah, because at the moment, if you get a BIM model, then you will have a huge amount of information in it. A lot of it will be stuff that you genuinely don't need, because it will have been put together for reasons of design or construction. So what we've tried to do with this is filter out the information that isn't isn't needed. Okay. So can I ask you, we crack through this. I think there are, how many attributes are there, Jis? So it's 34. Okay. Should we go through, Sharon, and just check? I need to jump out into one of the other workshops if that's okay. Would you mind just polishing this one off?
Okay. Yep.
Oh, we've just got 5 minutes left. Is that right? Is that how much we've allocated?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay. Has anybody got any? Should we just go through them quickly and then see if people can think of somebody else that could be providing that information? Callum, do you have a view?
I'm still looking down through the list, but
Yeah.
I think the comment I would have is that sometimes when I read what the description is, I've got to think about what the actual intent is.
I'm quite happy for us to change the questions to make them more intelligible. So if you've got any comment about that, then just can put it in column J, and we can improve the question.
Yeah, and the other thing I've noticed is that sometimes where in my mind I think that the main contractor or one of the contractors still has a part to play in specifying, you know, we use the term value engineering, but as long as it's done by stage 4, the end of stage 4, they will still take a design and develop it. So they will have a part to play in specifying the type of equipment that's used.
Yes.
I think the only problem is the trade contractor, unless they're insured, shouldn't, because as soon as you start making changes, you have design liability, and a lot of the contractors can't. So we are pushing these back up to the designer.
Yeah,
I
guess it's different.
obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're right. They take on design liability, but I you know I see that myself. But yeah, it will be different for different projects, I'm sure.
Okay.
I think as well, it's depending on the trade contractor, you know, depending on the specialism. I understand that the sentences or the description that's been given, we weren't, if you like, happy with some of the wording, but we've just taken it as the same sentences have been put out for all the groups. So, you know, just take our interpretation of it. But as I say, if anybody wants to, I don't know if you want to discuss the changes that were made, or as I say, the only other thing I'd added in was that as a trade contractor, we would push back design because we now really can't get involved in that. We can assist based on our experience and knowledge of products, but it's more difficult where we want to help, particularly in refurbishment, where we want to help people, but we've got to be careful what how we lead the changes. Is there any other comments about this? I don't know if there's any other, if you want to scroll up, if there's any other entries on the.
Yeah, sorry, Kelly again. You probably Michael. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much like what was just said in the last comment. I think it's, you know, as we go through the levels of information and how that's going to be held in a system, and then you come down to kind of this lowest level, you know, penetration cells, and then all the attribute information below that. I think from an operational point of view, because I'm trying to focus very much that this is an operational group, not a kind of concept design gathering. From an operational point of view, I believe that those questions are particularly confusing, and I think the best people to answer those questions are the people who are actually going to be using them. So again, these are you know, people that are going to be going out doing the inspections, doing the servicing, doing the checks. I'm just wondering if these have been checked with those people. You know, from a housing provider representative, my role is to manage the operations side of things, but obviously I don't do the technical elements of it. Obviously oversee the technical, but I'm not doing the day-to-day stuff. So that's one of my comments on there, is that I just think we really need to be specific, asking the right questions and giving the information to somebody actually and how they need that, because this would be for the use of them. Yes, we're going to hold that asset information in our systems, but we've got to remember that all of this information is to give to somebody so that they can ensure they do their maintenance, repair and servicing in the right way. And the other thing is, I get that the information, all of this information is going to come through to us, you know, in this modelling BIM format with the asset information behind. As a housing provider, we've still got to put that somewhere. We will never be able to hold that level of information for operational use. There's not going to be a systems. I know that, you know, technology led, there's reading systems, but we will never put that into our systems. It will never, ever have open formats enough to drop that information into. It's just a consideration around how we keep that maintained in an operational phase of the building.
Well, I think the problem is that the volunteers, if you like, for these groups. I don't know whether or not the expectation has been asked, or maybe, you know, it's a valid point. There's no point us all talking around a table and then handing it to someone who didn't see it coming, that wasn't involved in the decision-making process, and it's absolutely bloody useless to them. So it may be that there's a request for an operational input. Now, whether that's people like yourself, Kelly, who can take that into your own organisation and ask for feedback. I don't know if George or Richard or anybody has made that approach. So I think just if you can, you know, take a note of that, it'd be good to. I don't know if it has gone out to wider groups, Kelly, to be honest. I'm dealing with it more from the construction side, but yeah. I'm just conscious that when I'm dealing with facilities management, I'm dealing with the janitors, I'm dealing with the estates departments, I'm dealing with, and they all, you know, the first question we ask them for is the fire strategy drawings, information about what's already installed, and it's blank pages, empty drawers, and blank faces that we get majority of the time. So I'm conscious that although I'm speaking from an installer construction and from this side of things as a trade contractor, I also see the difficulties placed upon your staff, because they can't, you know, there's a hole in the wall, but they can't tell me to fix it because they don't know anything about the wall, let alone, you know, what's going through the hole. So if Jess can take a comment to maybe approach certain individuals to go out to their organisation and expand on that, I think that's a valid point.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're all here for the same reason, for the fact that, you know, we're here to ensure that we're getting the right level of information so that, you know, the golden thread can be maintained all the way through the life cycle of the building. I just think as an operational group, we need to be considering the operational impacts and restrictions, because unfortunately we're still going to have some of those restrictions operationally. It doesn't mean that we can't hold a level of information, it doesn't mean that we don't need to hold it, but we've got to think our housing providers, you know, social housing providers, are going to be able to manage that level of information. You know, some housing organisation that I've spoken to, you know, from a retro BIM point of view, and some of the, you know, they're not going to be even modelling some of their older buildings. So you're then going to have, you know, two lots of types of buildings coming over. You've got the new ones that are going to all have the BIM information, and you've got the older buildings, you know, so we've got to be realistic on what we can and cannot hold and what's relevant, because obviously the whole point of BIM is, you know, we don't want to, it's got to be the right information and relevant information.
Yep. Well, I mean, there'll be something getting built today that doesn't have the right information, you know, so we're not even talking about old stock here, but that's why we added in like the red boxes under operator, next to what areas need to be accessible for inspections. You know, there's no point in everybody building something, but the actual operator of the building can't get to it to do, you know, the inspections that are being placed upon yourselves. So, you know, we can build whatever we want to build, but at the end of the day, we're handing the keys over to somebody that's got to maintain it and keep the property maintained and make it, you know, safe and fit for purpose. So it's all valid, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think our time's up, guys. I think
Go back into
probably coming looking for us.
Yeah.
Thank
See you on
you.
the other side. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.